Hello, everybody. So we are coming up on this new moon in August on the 12th. This new moon in Leo happens to also be a solar eclipse. So we're entering into the eclipse portal. And like always, I thought I would take this opportunity to check in with the cards and see what archetypal themes might be presenting at this time. So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go silent. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle. I'll be with you momentarily. Just going to say a prayer over these cards. So it's definitely some interesting energy that's coming through. And ultimately, there can be great benefit if we stay grounded in the field of turbulent energy. That's really sort of the gist of this, that there is a certain amount of chaotic crumbling away of old forms, right? Tower is major upheaval, big changes that affect us in core ways. And typically, we feel this kind of earth-shattering energy play out in areas of life that we look to for some kind of stability. So the changing of households, the changing of jobs, the falling away or shifting of relationships, the elements of life that we cling to for some sense of security, these things could be going through potentially really big changes. I mean, when we're looking at this on a larger scale, because obviously, in these seasons of life, there's sort of like what's happening personally, but also what's happening collectively. So, structures that we look to for stability and security, such as, governments or institutions, that there is significant earth shattering change. And often what I talk about with the tower, because the tower is, unsettling for many people. These big changes are often not they take people by surprise and they're unwelcome. But, the thing about tower energy is that things that are built on a solid foundation, when the earth moves, they stay standing. They remain upright. But anything that's built on a cracked or crumbling foundation must fall when the earth moves. And that deterioration must be cleared before you can build again on a more solid foundation. And so, so much of the time we're trying to cobble together these, crumbling structures and just sort of, it's the Band-Aid on the gaping wound. And it doesn't work very well. Ultimately, there are times in our lives where we really must begin again. So, I often associate the tower with Kali. And Kali is the goddess of creation and destruction. These two energies go hand in hand. Often in life, in order to create something new, we first must clear the detritus of that which came before. We have to destroy things that don't serve us anymore. And ultimately, the message that I also like to convey when tower energy comes through is this idea of let go or be dragged. Again, nobody really likes to be, blindsided by some big change. Particularly when they thought that everything was fine, everything was stable in this area of life. However, if you try to hold on to the thing that is no longer serving you, it's going to be an extremely painful process, this great change. Whereas if we surrender, if we understand that sometimes these old structures must fall, and we willingly, let go of these things, then we actually can build something that is far more constructive, far more supportive in our lives. And so, that's kind of being highlighted here by the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is marking a time of transition that, can feel, again, very destabilizing. I often, mark this as a kind of dark night of the soul, where we are going through a time of great change and metamorphosis. And there's this sort of liminal space in between where we're not where we were, but we aren't quite where we're going yet. And that this can feel, it can bring up feelings of hopelessness, right? Where we are in a state of becoming, and it's amorphous. The story I tell often with the Eight of Cups is about the caterpillar and the process that the caterpillar must go through to become a butterfly. In order to make this great transformation, it first must liquefy its body. It becomes nothing before it can be transformed into a higher state of being. And one might imagine that to the caterpillar, it feels like death. It's a kind of an ego death. It's this idea, like if you devote your life to anything, like, I sometimes use the analogy, like you're a child. I knew so many ballet dancers when I was growing up. And it's such, it requires so much of you to dedicate yourself to this art it's really like a combination of art and sport where you're shaping your body in such an extreme way. And these girls, they would spend their entire lives in the studio. That they were incredibly restrictive about their diets and their social lives. So you can imagine if you've devoted your entire life to a practice and built your identity around this practice, what happens when suddenly you're in a performance and you injure your knee and you can no longer dance? Imagine what that feels like. You know, certainly life doesn't end, but it is the end of the life that you once knew. And this disintegration of identity can be extremely disheartening and bring up a tremendous amount of fear and pain. Grief. I think there's grief associated with these major transitions in life. And certainly with cup energy, we are called to feel that fully, but we are also called to be in this process of disintegration so that we can be born again under a new moon, right? And so that's where the Two of Swords comes in. The Two of Swords is having a peaceful heart as a result of quieting the mind. And I very much associate this card with meditation. It is a deep internal exploration. And you can see this. First of all, I love that the moon here is almost new. You know, we don't know if it's waxing or waning, but it is just a mere sliver, highlighting this dark inner exploration. And you can see that she's blindfolded. And the reason that she is blindfolded is she's not turning her gaze outward onto the external world to inform her of who she is. She is turning her gaze inward in order to seek a kind of inner truth. So again, she is not saying I am identifying with the world of form and deriving my sense of self from that. I am really looking within and sitting with the truth of how I feel, of what I think, of and you know, knowing the narrative but not becoming overly identified with it. This is really at least the kind of meditation that I practice, this ability to track activity that's going on in sense space, but always identifying as the witness and not the activity itself. And this practice of noticing and watching often gives way to a kind of like insight. I mean, the kind of meditation I practice is insight meditation. And that's when we are available for these kind of bigger hits of knowledge, these downloads of information that can help us more skillfully navigate circumstances that are ever changing, right? So aces are like the highest octave of an energy. It is very much like getting that lightning bolt from the blue, that hit of information that can help us see clearly things that maybe have been obscured in this dark night of the soul. And, you know, when we have this greater vision for what might be possible on the other side of change, then we can use the fire of creativity in our bellies to make things happen out in the world. So again, this is a time, as much as it you know, may yield some difficulty, it's a time to harness this energy and vision and create something new on the other side of this transition. And there is so much indication that this creative fire is coming through in a very skillful and masterful way for us to build structures in the world that are fertile and supportive. Again, I always think, look, pentacles are really related to the earth. And look at both of these cards, the flourishing of flora that we see in the background. These emblems of the fruit of our labor. I love the Nine of Pentacles. It's literally one who generates tremendous wealth and well-being for themselves based on their ability to create beauty in the world. It is a kind of looking towards our own gifts, each of us possessing a unique set of skills that when we invest in them and share them generously with the world, we are rewarded handsomely. And it actually makes the world a better place. There's a kind of beautiful expression of abundance that comes through the Nine of Pentacles, and it's very much mirrored here in the King of Pentacles too. This idea of mastery in terms of building a world that can materially support everyone. That this comes when we harness the passion and creativity that lives within us, and we return to it, we engage it, we meditate on it, and how it is that we might want to bring that into being in a more concrete way. So certainly this is a time of great change, and there may be some really big feelings that go along with that. And I'm going to invite you to be with that in a compassionate way, but don't over-identify with the pain. Notice what happens if you can stay in the state of the observer. And if you notice that sensation of flow and you bring your attention towards it, what vision comes through you at this time that may make the world a better place? So that's what the cards are saying. And that's freedom. So I am wishing you many blessings on this new moon and sending you a lot of love and support this time. Take care.